And today's topic is one that I hope is very timely. We are seeing lots of leads come through Unique Venues right now and sending them out to venues. And we want to make sure that people are responding to them. And so for today, we are doing a presentation on responding to leads, inquiries, and RFPs with the goal of developing effective strategies for booking more business at your venue. And we're going to go ahead and share my screen here and get this rolling. Once we get it started, oops, hang on, come on. PowerPoint does not want to cooperate at the moment. There we go. All right, we'll get that rolling. We will share our screen and we should be up and ready to roll. So again, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because one of the things that I remember from my early career when I was the conference services manager at the University of Arizona in Tucson was a mandate to grow my business by 5 to 10% per year. And I remember jumping into that exercise and trying to figure out exactly how do I go about there. Now I think it's sharing. How do I go about cultivating those leads, those inquiries? And of course, that's a whole separate discussion. But then once they come in, what do I need to do with them? And so what I want to do today is I want to share some information with you that I have pulled together in a couple of different ways. So first of all, I did a lot of research, spent a lot of time kind of looking for planner surveys and different blog posts and articles and things like that that really talked about what planners, what professional meeting planners are looking for when a hotel or a venue is responding to an inquiry about a piece of business or a lead that's being sent to them, or an actual dedicated request for proposal that a meeting planner or a organization or a meeting planning group has sent specifically to a hotel, a venue, a special event destination, something like that. The second thing that I did is I was actually at a Meeting Planners International event for the Arizona Sunbelt chapter here in Arizona a couple of months ago. And I was doing a presentation up there. And when I was done, we were having a little bit of a happy hour reception. And I was talking with some people. And when they figured out who I was and where I was from and what Unique Venues was, they all kept asking me, you know, we use your service a lot. But it seems like a lot of times we send in requests for information or we send in leads and we don't hear back from people. And of course, it's interesting because what we always hear from venues, and many of you on the call put into chat if this is your experience, a lot of times we hear that you get leads and then you respond back to them and you don't hear back from planners. And so there's this kind of dichotomy that exists out there about, you know, which side of the story is the truth or is it somewhere in the middle? But what I do know is that when I started out, I was a one-stop shop. I was a one-person shop, and it meant I had to do everything. I had to take care of the business of the day. I had to, you know, manage all the operations that was going on with the events that were happening. I had to respond to sales things as they were coming in, and it was an incredible juggling act to try to figure out how do I balance all of that stuff. And it wasn't until I figured out that really the priority needed to be on sales when sales was presented in front of me, and try to drop everything else that I possibly could to take care of responding to that request, that lead, you know, that inquiry that's coming in. Because if I didn't take advantage of it then, if I waited a couple of days or if I waited, you know, a week or a couple of weeks, chances were real good that I was going to not hear back from that planner, or that I was going to be very quickly told that they've already made a decision and moved on to something else. So we're going to talk a little bit today about what the expectations are and why planners are in such a hurry. So today's agenda looks like this. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to share some planner insights with you. So some things that I learned with you know, the research that I did and with the planners from MPI. I did have a follow-up session with 5 of them, just a Zoom chat, coffee chat for about 45 minutes, where I talked about some of the research that I had and I gathered some more insight from them to put into this presentation. You'll see a few quotes in here that come from those planners that were kind of me encapsulating the things that they were saying, again, hopefully in a way just to back up the ideas and the concepts that exist here. And then we're going to talk about the typical response workflow. So what does it take to respond to those leads, those inquiries, those RFPs that are coming in? We'll look at the 4 different phases of response: the initial response, lead scoring, detailed response, and follow-up strategies. So let's jump right in. And again, keep in mind, you can use the chat box if you need to, and the Q&A if questions come up as we go throughout. So The global meetings industry did a survey that was released about a month or so ago for 2023, surveying a whole bunch of planners from various disciplines and organizations and backgrounds out there. And one of the primary findings was that 78% of planners are unhappy with the response that they get from venues. That's both hotels and special event or destination venues that they're working with. And in digging in a little deeper, their unhappiness stems from three primary areas. One is response time. Two is the quality of information that is given or provided by the venue. And three is the quality of the materials that are given or provided by the venues. So if you think about that, that's a pretty significant number. Now, if you're like me, I remember working with some meeting planners, and we might have a couple meeting planners on the webinar today. So we're not being critical of meeting planners. Meeting planners have very difficult, challenging jobs. And I learned a lot just spending 45 minutes chatting with some of my colleagues and peers from MPI, like one independent meeting planner who on average plans, organizes, contracts, and executes about 120 meetings per year. And I'm just started thinking about just the volume of work that goes into as an independent meeting planner, working with all those different clients and then secure. And she does this all over the world. She goes anywhere. Half the time when I try to communicate with her, she's out of country somewhere, and 120 a year. She's on the go constantly. And so for her, it's critical that she's getting good information, timely information, so that she can make decisions and move on. So we've got work to do, whether it's fair or not, because sometimes meeting planners can have high expectations. They do have them, and we want to try to meet them whenever we can. 46% of planners expect speed in a response. So that might be some of what is serving that initial dissatisfaction with the response process. They want it same day or they want it next day when they're engaging with venues, which again, going back to my days when I was the only person, I get it. That's a big ask for someone to say, hey, I sent it to you at 10 a.m. this morning. Why didn't I get follow-up by 4 p.m. in the afternoon? But they are, again, almost half are looking for same day or next day responses. And here's a couple of quotes from the people on my coffee chat. One was from a VP of sales and marketing for a hospitality management company. You must be the first to respond. It is the #1 priority, the desire to close business. This is the philosophy with their company to make sure that the people that are working with the various planners that they're serving, that they're the first to respond. So if a lead, an inquiry, an RFP comes in, they drop everything, they're on it, and they want to be the first person to get it back in that planner's hands. The second quote here was from an independent professional meeting planner, the one that's booking 120 events a year. When I reach out to a venue, it's because I am ready to book and need to check that off my list before moving on to the next event. So again, it may not be fair that you're just getting notice of it, but she's been working on it for a while and she's ready to get moving on to the next section of this. Why are they in such a hurry? Well, again, you just got that thing, but they've been doing research and they've been planning for days, weeks, or even months. Here's some stats from Google from right before the pandemic. I haven't seen an updated one since the pandemic has ended, if we're going to use that there. I think it'll be officially over here in another 3 weeks. 89% of B2B researchers, they're using internet search during the process. So they're sitting on their laptops. They're checking out venues, they're checking out options, they're looking for things that are a good fit. On average, they're doing 12 searches prior to engaging on a specific brand's site. That's not clicking on 12 links, that's coming back 12 different times and typing in some mix of keywords, venues near me, or venues in San Francisco, or banquet halls in North America, or whatever it is that they're doing. On average, 12 keyword searches prior to settling in on some type of a short list or a specific brand's website. And then 57% of the buying process is done prior to engaging with sales. So again, similar to the independent meeting planner, people are doing all their research and they're coming up with I think I want to do this. and then they reach out to you and let you know. And so all that's happening in stealth. You don't know what's going on, but once they engage with you, they're ready. They don't need a whole lot more information. They don't want to have a lengthy, back and forth over email. They want answers as to, are you available? Can you do this? And what's it going to cost me? And so that's why, again, it seems to us that they're in a hurry. They're really not in a hurry. Sometimes, again, we all have gotten those last minute requests and things like that. But oftentimes for them, this is the culmination of days, weeks, or even months of work that has led up to saying, I've decided you are on my short list, or I've decided you're the one, but now I need to know because now I'm up against a deadline, or this is in my cycle, or I'm ready to check it off my list and move on. So there's just some insight into kind of why planners are sometimes dissatisfied with the response time. They also indicate they're dissatisfied with the quality of information that's received. And that would be, whatever it is that you're sending them in a packet or an email or follow-up materials based on the requests that come in. In looking at, doing some research out there, what are planners looking for in those responses? Well, one, they're looking for information that matches their requests. So what are the facility options that are available, or what are the specific facilities that are available? Sometimes that's not always known, depending on, if they're booking 3 years out and you're a higher ed client, maybe you can't tell them specifically which residence hall they're going to sleep in, but you can tell them that you have traditional, double room beds available in the amount that they need, things like that. Food and beverage info, technology specifications, pricing. That was a critical thing in the coffee talk, was people talking about making sure that they got good pricing information in a response, not a tell me more, not a here's a range. It was tell me what it's going to cost for the kind of event that I have put forward out there. They're also looking for creative solutions to gaps in your ability to service the event. So if there's something that you can't quite accommodate in their request, or maybe it's, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, do you have a solution for them? Instead of just saying, hey, I can do 2/3 of this, but on the other third, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. Have you come up with a way to do that? I remember there was one year that we were renovating the student union on campus, and our large ballroom and 2 of our main huge dining facilities were offline. And we had a group of 3,000 people that was coming that we needed to feed for 4 days. And we actually ended up figuring out that we could do that in the parking garage right behind the student union. We just did it on the 3rd floor, so it was covered. We put picnic tables out there. We pitched it to them and said, you know what, this is going to be a great experience. We're going to make it like a farm picnic. We had hay bales and music and big fans keeping air moving and all that kind of stuff. And actually, after that summer was done, they liked it so much they wanted to keep doing it. And we actually had to say no to that because it was a big ordeal to go through the logistics to make that happen. But it was a solution that made sure that that event was able to have their food and beverage needs that accommodated. And most importantly, they just want you to be honest about what you cannot accommodate. So if they've sent you a specs list and there's a couple of things that you can't handle, maybe you don't have the technology that they're really looking for, or maybe your food and beverage isn't flexible, you have to use in-house instead of bringing in an outside, then just be direct and honest about that. If you have a solution, great. But if not, they at least want to know that you've acknowledged, yes, I saw it, I read it, and unfortunately, in this particular case, it's not something that we can accommodate at our venue. And again, here's a different quote from one of the other planners that was on the call. Too many venues ignore my specifications and send me a generic packet of information that does not address my specific needs. So there is a balance here between trying to get information in their hands quickly. So maybe you've got some nice materials that you put together and develop, but they're general, they're generic, or they're like a peanut butter approach where it's like, I'm going to list every meeting space that I have, or I'm going to list every food and beverage option, instead of looking at what they're asking for and culling that down to the specific information that they want to be able to match up to see if your venue is the right fit for them. And I see Katie acknowledging that. And so thank you, Katie, for doing that. I was very guilty of that in the beginning of my tenure as well, too. I thought, well, at least I'm getting stuff to them quickly. And then it was constant, questions coming back and forth. Whereas if I had just taken a little bit of that time, then maybe, I could have moved us through the sales funnel, gotten us to closing that piece of business a little bit quicker. Okay, so that's quality of information. Then the third one was quality of materials. And this is a big one, especially in this day and age. Almost all the meeting planners on the coffee chat said that they are just floored by places. And again, this is large hotel chains. This is high-end boutique event centers that send them a 1990s looking version of a Word document template that's got stuff thrown into it that's not formatted correctly, that doesn't line up correctly. There's no visual images. Like, it looks like something someone's been using for 30 years, and they send it to them in response to a bid. When we're living in 2023 and we have all these incredible digital assets that are available to us. And so again, what are they looking for? They're looking for engaging multimedia elements. So, ideally, all this stuff is on the website. You see the quote at the bottom. Ideally, I can find it all on a venue's website, but if not, I definitely expect those things in a venue's response to my request. So if you've got great virtual tours and video and things like that on your website, fabulous. If you don't, they're still looking for it. If nothing else, they'd like some high quality photos or some floor plans or some things that really start to give them a sense of the space and what it is that you're offering out there. Ideally, they'd love it to be an interactive digital proposal. So, lay the stuff out, but have links to let them dig in deeper. So if they want to go to the full catering menus and see for themselves all the option, instead of having to look that up, they can just click on that in your proposal and go to it. Or if you want to give them a virtual tour of the ballroom, hyperlink it, let them click off of that, go in and see the ballroom or a rotating gallery of events that have occurred there or whatever it might be. They're really looking for people to leverage the technology that's available today to give them that robust response without it having to be 37 pages of information. Like, they want to go look at the things that they are most interested in. Includes floor plans, capacity charts, full menus, referral lists. And a referral list would be, if you don't provide catering, do you have a list of preferred caterers? If you're an outdoor venue, special event venue, and people have to get their own tables and chairs, do you have a list of the local places that they can get that from, so on and so forth. Again, they're looking in that to make sure that they understand the scope of what they have to accomplish for that meeting or event. Do you have references from similar organizations or events? So one of the planners said, I have a venue that she works with regularly, but their references are always from brides and grooms. And she doesn't do weddings, but all the references that come in every proposal packet that she gets back is how much the bride and groom loved the last wedding that they held at this particular venue. And again, she knows the venue and she just looks past that now, but in the beginning, it just didn't really resonate for her. So if this is a high-end technological conference, do you have a reference or an example from one that you've hosted in the past? Or if this is a corporate launch or whatever it might be, they're looking for similar references, not just something that sounds great, but maybe isn't relevant to the type of event that they're bringing in. A couple other things that they're looking for is meaningful experiences. So they want to leave their attendees with indelible memories. So what is it that you offer at your venue? And again, we are unique venues, right? So we have unique experiences that are available to us. That could be just the physical setup of the venue. It could be lighting or different kinds of acoustical things that you do to present a wow factor. It could be extra things that people can do when they're on site. So is it doing hiking around the property, or is it doing yoga or wellness activities, or what is it that you can bundle in to ensure that attendees are going to remember this event as compared to just the generic event that might be happening in the hotel ballroom 3 blocks over. They're looking for flexibility, and so it's great to have package options, but a lot of times, especially still coming out of the pandemic when budgets are still a little tight, they're looking for customizable options. So can I pick and choose a little bit? Can I downgrade, or can I shuffle things around a little bit to give me exactly what I'm looking for my meeting or event? They're looking for partnership or advising. All 5 of the planners on the call said that they appreciated a venue that first listened, so that was important, but then responded with ideas to make the event better. So maybe, there's a way of fitting them into your venue that's going to allow traffic flow to be better. Or maybe there is, again, one of these meaningful experiences that can be bundled in, but they want that that partnership. They want you to recommend how the event can be a success because you know your venue best. At the end of the day, though, they still know they get to make the decision and they want you to respect that. But they do appreciate that insight and your understanding that comes into play. Technology is critical in this day and age. It needs to be up to date. Projectors need to have high lumens. One of them told me a horrible story about a hotel where nobody could see the screen after about 10 o'clock because the lights coming in through the window was so bright it washed out the screen completely. Multi-platform, so can it handle Mac and Windows and any kind of stuff that's going in there. They want it to be staffed, so is there someone that's going to run around and help? And in this day and age, again, for a while, this was all pay as you go, but they're looking for complimentary dongles and clickers and things like that. I mean, you can ask presenters to bring those things with. They're always going to forget them. They just want to know that someone's going to take care of it, walk up there, plug them in or click something in, and they're off and they're ready to go. Another big one came up in all the research and also in our conversation was Wi-Fi. In this day and age, everyone believes Wi-Fi should be free and easily accessible. So they understand that some of the places that they go, the way that the networks are set up, you have to give them, special guest usernames and passwords, and that's at least okay. The ones that are really bad is when you have to give each individual attendee a separate username and password, and they're all these weird generic things, and no one remembers them. They just want a guest layer. They want to be able to just connect, say, I agree to the terms and conditions, and be off and rolling. More outdoor and green space options. This one came up as well. A lot of times people are looking to, give people outdoor breaks or give people the ability to spend a little bit of time or maybe do some roundtables outside or something if the weather is nice. Or even it's just for their own use of like taking pictures of speakers or the board or whatever it might be. Instead of doing that inside in the ballroom against a standard ballroom wall, are there outdoor green spaces where, again, it brings the venue to life and brings the experience to life in a different way? And then finally, one of the things that I was actually really interested to hear was that they're looking for collaboration tools. So they actually would like to be invited to a Microsoft team or some other kind of a collaboration space where the things you're sending them can be stored and the things they're sending you can be stored, and they don't have to rely on 67 emails that they're digging through and trying to find where was that floor plan or where was that specific contract addendum or whatever it might be. It's all stored in one place, and they're looking for some measure of communication automation. So again, they talked about, again, the 90s style of, I gave you the checklist that says 60 days out, you do this, 45 days out, you do this, 30 days out, you do this. For the independent meeting planner that's planning 120 events, that's a big ask for her to remember everybody's reminder grid for 120 events that are overlapping across an entire calendar year. She says, why can't someone just trigger an email to me that says, you have 3 days until this is due, and then that's her reminder to go out and do it, or a task in Microsoft Teams or whatever it is. So again, they're looking for help because especially an independent planner who's kind of doing this all on their own, maybe they don't have a large corporate system that they're working with or something like that. They're looking for ways to be able to make their lives easier and not have the answer be, well, I told you were supposed to tell me 45 days out, but I didn't remind you, and now it's 20 days out. And I'm sorry, but this is what you're stuck with. Like, those are not the conversations I know you as venue managers don't really enjoy having, and planners don't really enjoy having those either. A couple of last things, and then we'll jump into the response side of this. Here was a chart that I found when I was doing my research that showed from meeting planners, what kind of venue type are they looking for? And again, I think this is good information for all of us. Because what it's saying is that hotels are not necessarily the preferred venue types for a lot of meeting planners that are out there. 34% are looking for general purpose venues that allow planners to work with their preferred vendors or coordinate specific event details on their own. So some of our clients, some of you on this call today may be one of those places that has a box or has a limited menu of services that's available. People rent the box and the limited services, and then they do their own thing. And 34% of meeting planners out there in this survey were looking for that kind of facility out there. 31% were preferred working with specialized venues that prepackage almost everything so that planners can focus more on attendee engagement. So again, for a lot of our venues, that is the approach that we take. That's very much a higher ed approach. Is, here's our packages, or here's what we do for you, and we take care of everything. We've got the catering, we've got the accommodations, you let us worry about that. You worry about planning the agenda for your event and getting your speakers and make sure everything goes off without a hitch for your attendees out there. And 19% we're still in that space of saying, hey, the hotel is still where I want to be. I know it, it's comfortable, everything's in one place, and that's the route that I go. So I think that's good news for all of us, is that meeting planners continue to appreciate the value that we bring within the unique venue space. And again, both options are important because there is a subset of planners out there looking for either the kind of tightly controlled prepackaged, this is how we do it, or the here's the blank slate, come on in and work with us and make your event what you want it to be. And then finally, here's some decision factors that meeting planners look at, how important it is when they're choosing a hotel or a destination for a meeting. Location, of course, is at the top, as you would expect. It's always location, location, location. But after that, it's quality of service. So how well are you going to take care of them? Meeting space size, room rates, if it's accommodation-based event, free Wi-Fi, there it is, right in that table, 4.31. Even more important than the meeting room technology is they want free Wi-Fi out there. So again, if you're not there yet, something to continue to keep striving for. What's your attrition policy look like? Guest room technology. The RFP process is mentioned in this. It's not in the 4-point range, but it's still pretty significant. Attractions, points of interest near the hotel, and customized food and beverage option. So again, hopefully this kind of just lays some context for what planners are thinking about, what they're looking for, and why it's so important to try to meet them where they're at within the RFP response process. And that's what we're going to jump into next. And again, if you do have any questions at any point, throw them in the Q&A, but I'm going to keep rolling along since I think we're running right about on time here. So we're going to talk about the response workflow. And there are 4 phases in my mind to the response workflow. So there's the initial response. There's a process that I call lead scoring. There's the detailed response. And then there's follow-up. And so we're going to talk about all of those a little bit today, starting with the initial response. So here's a couple more quotes from my coffee chat. This was a corporate meeting planner. At least half of the venues I reach out to never respond at all, not even to acknowledge the request. It makes me wonder why they even bother advertising at all. And I mean, we've all had this in our own personal experience, right? You're trying to buy something online, or you're reaching out to a company's customer service group and they just never get back to you. And you think, why do you even bother to put a customer service address up there if you're not going to acknowledge or respond to my email, my request when it comes through? The independent professional meeting planner, something that venues can do better is tell me when they are unable to host my group and the reason why. And this was really important to her because often I can be flexible with the details of the event, but I never get the chance to have that conversation. So she doesn't, again, know, it goes off into the nowhere land. Were they not available? Was I too big or too small? Was my budget not right? She never even gets the chance to have that conversation, and because she's planning 120 events a year, she's also not spending time trying to run that information down for herself. Either she hears it or she moves on to plan B, C, or D in her short list of venues that she's searching for out there. So let's talk a little bit about some best practices for the initial response. The biggest key here is having a plan for your lead management. So as these inquiries, these leads, these RFPs are coming through, where are they being sent to, and who is supposed to follow up with them? And again, if you're a one-person shop, I understand the struggle. I lived that way for almost 3 years until I got a second staff member and we could share the load just a little bit. And even by the time I left, I was still trying to get a dedicated salesperson, and I never got there in my role at the university. And when I go to venues and they've got that dedicated salesperson, I applaud them because it is difficult to balance sales versus operations. But there are ways to mitigate those things. So number one is, do you have a dedicated email or a group email where these things are being sent? So if you're a Unique Venues client and you've got a profile listing, is it being sent to a generic, like I have here, inquiries@venuename.com or org or edu or whatever you are? or is it going to your personal email address? Because I remember my days, and it was not uncommon, especially during busy parts of the year, for me to get 150 to 200 emails a day. And it was really easy to miss a lead or an opportunity that came through in the midst of everything that was going on. But we had a dedicated info at email address where these things were directed to. Actually, back in my day, I really have to go back a little bit. That was when Unique Venues we used to fax leads out. So if the fax machine rang, whoever was in the vicinity immediately went over there and looked to see if it was lead coming off. But in this day and age, it is the email or the group email, which is a way of highlighting them. So for example, from a technology standpoint, on my phone, I have silenced all of my email alerts. I did it several years ago, and it really restored my sanity. So it wasn't dinging every time something came through. But I would have left this one, I would have left the notifications on. So the only time my phone would have buzzed or dinged at me would have been when a lead or an inquiry or opportunity hit this generic email address. That's one way for me as an busy individual to cull out when something needs my attention. Second best practice out there is to have an auto response. So again, this is another reason why the dedicated or the group email is useful, because you don't want to necessarily put an auto response on your personal email box that says, thank you for your lead or your inquiry or your interest. Someone will be back. We've received it. We're excited to get it. And someone will be back to you in 1 to 2 business days, or whatever kind of a message you want to develop in relation to that. If you put that on the dedicated email address or that group email address, immediately you're already a step ahead of a lot of other people out there. The planner knows you got it, and someone is supposed to follow up with them. Now, if you're going to do an auto response, you need to be committed to actually doing it, because you don't want to send them a message that says someone will follow up in 1 to 2 business days, and then you get back to them in a week. And so you have to think through and making sure that you're prepared to do it. But it's a great way for someone to at least know that the inquiry is acknowledged and that you're working on it, that someone is going to get back to them with some more information, because that's going to keep you in play. If you don't have that, or if they don't know what's going on and they get 3 other venues that immediately respond back or send an auto response and send stuff through them, they may make a decision in the first couple of days. And this happens more often than, I mean, again, probably all of you have had this experience. You're like, but I got back to you in 48 hours. And someone's like, well, I got a great proposal in the first 12, and that's the one I went with. And thanks, I'll keep you in mind for the future. So it really is about being quick and responding and letting them know that you're interested in the game. As they come in, then you need to have a plan for lead triage. So who is going to be looking at the dedicated email or the group email? Are you doing that? Do you have a rotating schedule in the office? What is the way that you are going to assess these leads when they come in and ensure that whatever commitment you've made in an auto response is going to be followed up on proactively out there? And so that might be working with your team to set a schedule. It might be giving someone primary responsibility and then giving them backup responsibility to someone else when they're on vacation or out sick or something like that. It may be that there is I've heard of places that do just a quick 15-minute every morning or every afternoon kind of a check-in meeting as a team that just says, what's come in today, what are we working on, and who's going to get it out? And just make sure that things are moving along out there. So you need to think through, how am I going to handle that at my venue? And then finally, you really need to create a sales culture within your organization. And again, for you, it may be obvious. This is business. It brings revenue to my venue. We need to jump on it and get busy with it. But a lot of times, again, going back to, I know many of you may be venue managers at places where the rental of the venue is not the primary mission of the organization or the entity to which you belong. And so for everybody else out there, what you need is maybe not as important as what's going on for the main organization. And so what you really have to do is you have to help educate and explain to people, again, hopefully some of the statistics today here are useful, to go back to a supervisor or go back to a chief operating officer or somebody and say, you know what, if we're going to be competitive, I have to be able to drop everything sometimes and focus on a lead. And that means someone else has to pick up my operational responsibilities, or maybe like I remember I had carte blanche with my boss. If something hot came in, I could cancel a meeting, I could leave a meeting, I could do whatever I needed to do to focus on the response without consequence or penalty, because he knew my primary objective at that point was bringing a piece of business into our venue. And that's a culture that it takes it takes a lot of time and effort to get people there. And then it also takes reporting out on the successes or even the failures and why things happen, so people understand what you're doing to remain competitive, continue to advance and be better, and celebrate the things when they come in. So there's some best practices for handling the initial response. Now, the second step then was a process that I used called lead scoring. And I did this on my own to start with, and then we did this as a team as I was able to build out the office. And this is where you simply use a set of criteria to evaluate the quality of the lead. Now, you can come up with your own criteria, but these are the 5 that I used when I was evaluating leads that came in. The first was availability. So are the dates open? Do I have the required facilities and services to do this? Am I going to be staffed well enough to make this happen? If that was, absolutely, it's a dead point of my season and I want this piece of business, that's a 3. If, if it was going on, I was a higher ed institution, it was going on during the academic year and I knew I didn't have the space available, it was a 0. And it could have been a 1 or a 2, depending on, if there were some gaps and some challenges in there. Reputation, was this a well-known event? Was it going to add to my portfolio showing types of events that I could service? Or does it amplify my organizational mission? So does this really align with us in a way where this, everybody in the organization is going to feel good about this particular event being here? Again, that could be anywhere from a 0 to a 3. A 0 could be certain kinds of events that you don't want to host at your organization. And as a higher ed institution, we had a short list, not a really lengthy one, but a short list of things we just knew we were not going to do. Budget. So do they state a budget? Is it realistic in relation to pricing and costs? I'm sure we've all gotten that lead where we're like, yes, I want to have a reunion event for 150 people and my budget is $7 a head. That's a 0 for me, right? I'm like, that's never going to happen in a million years. But if they're giving you, hey, I've got, $25 a head or $30 a head, or if they've said, hey, we spent $12,000 at our last, event like this, and you look at that and say, okay, that's a 1, 2, or 3, you write that down. Workload. What is this event going to do to you? How complex is it? Is there going to be lots of moving pieces? Are you going to require extra staffing or staffing on the evenings and weekends, those sorts of things? How much lead time is there before the event? Is this a last minute request, or am I going to have, 18 months to work on gearing up for this, extra complex thing that's going on? And what are the other existing events that this might be overlapping with? So am I going to have a complication because this is now coming into play and it's going to throw my workload off and I'm going to have to figure out how to juggle and balance and figure some things out? And then finally would be return on investment. So what's the value to my venue? Does the revenue look good here when I've looked at the other things from a pricing, cost, workload perspective? Is it all that's going to come together in a way that says this is really useful for my venue? That could sometimes be not making a ton of money, but doing something that's well known or adds to your portfolio. I did a couple of those events there where I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to make a ton of money off of this, but I want to be able to show that I can do a technology conference so I can make more money on the next one that comes through and things like that. And you go through and you rate all these factors on a scale of 0 to 3, and any 0 means an immediate decline. Because if one of these things is a problem, then there's no point in wasting your time on it and trying to figure out, well, I'll make up for the budget in some other way. That's just not going to happen if you've rated this as a 0. My response matrix looked like this. If I did that, max score of 15, if it was 12 plus, it was a drop everything and respond immediately. This was a piece of business that I wanted. If it was 8 to 11, I'd make sure that we would respond within 1 business day. And if it was 5 to 7, I'd respond within, not within, 2 business days out there. Because obviously if anything was 4 or lower, that meant there was a 0 in there and it was out of play. So one of the important things to do though, is if you had a score of 0, or for whatever reason you said, we're just not going to do this, you need to send an immediate thank you message, declining the opportunity, but keeping the door open on future opportunities. Now here is kind of a just in practice example. We had a group one It's still actually at the university. It's been there for 23 years now, I think it is. The U.S. National Chamber of Commerce was looking for a home for their Winter Institute. When the request came in, availability was a 2. Did have some staffing challenges because it was during a winter break period. And I wasn't going to have as much access to staff as I normally would. Reputation-wise, though, the CBE and the Chamber were all over this and really wanted it in Tucson, and they were driving a lot of the process. From a budget standpoint, everything looked good. They had acknowledged all the costs that they would expect to have, and everything seemed reasonable from what they were talking about from a pricing perspective. Workload was a 1 for me because I had so few staff working. I knew that I was going to end up doing a lot of the work, and I did. I ran myself ragged for 8 days to bring this thing in, but the ROI was incredible on it for the institution, for my office, and really for the city of Tucson, because this was new revenue during a historic downtime for all of us. So the partner hotel next to camp, everybody was going to win big in this particular one. This was a 12, and so I dropped everything, and my focus really for about 2 or 3 days as I was engaging and doing this, and then for a couple of months thereafter was do whatever I need to do to bring this piece of business in to Tucson, and that's what we did out there. Now, if you are going to have to decline, if you haven't already done this, do this afternoon. Take 10 minutes and write up your sample templated decline message. So the next time you get a lead or an inquiry or an RFP that you can't handle, you can, as soon as you know that, just send it back to the planner and say, thank you for your interest in holding your event at my venue. It looks like it's a fabulous event. We've evaluated your request and must decline the opportunity to submit a proposal at this time. Give them a reason for that. So if the planner wants to reach out and say, or build some of that in. The reason is, we don't have the dates available, but if there's flexibility in your dates, please let us know. Or even better, say, look, we can't handle March 20th to the 23rd, but we could do the 24th to the 27th, or we could do April 1st to the 4th, or give them some options if you have options available out there in the decline message if you want to keep that door open. And then kind of a nice wrap up that I always did. If you have other events you're planning, we'd be interested in seeing where we can host you in the future. Additionally, we will reach out occasionally to keep you appraised of opportunities to meet at my venue. So again, you're letting them know you're going to add them to some marketing materials, put them in your CMA, and maybe reach out periodically to let them know, hey, we're now booking for summer of 2024. Or, hey, we're now running a promotion on holiday parties in November and December of 2023, whatever it is that you're doing. So again, if you have not done this, this is an easy one to check off your list this afternoon. Now we get into the detailed response. So some best practices related to developing the detailed response. So you've already done some sort of initial, I got it, I'm working on it, I'm going to get back to you quickly, whatever kind of a time window you've put on it. Now you want to get them the detailed response. So again, in doing the research and talking with the planners, here are some best practices for things that they're looking for. Number 1, make sure your response matches your venue's brand, logos, colors, layout. It creates confusion when your website looks one way and your materials look another way, or when it's not even really clear from what you're sending them which venue you are, or you've obviously your organization's put a lot of money and time and effort into developing that brand. Make sure that it carries over to the materials that you're sending. I know it can sometimes be a pain. I do consulting proposals all the time and send them out, and since we've rebranded, I'm now using a Word document where the only realistic way to make it happen is I do the proposal and then I put some pictures over the top of each page that then I put behind the text so that it looks like it's a nice formatted branded thing. It adds an extra 15 minutes to what I'm doing, but it really pops when we send that thing out and it's clear that it's a unique venue proposal that's going to whatever client is that we're sending it to. Provide useful information in your response, but try to be as brief as possible. Bullets are appreciated by planners. You don't need to overwhelm them with and shock and awe them with information. It needs to be relevant. It needs to relate to what they're asking for. But again, if you're planning 120 events a year, you don't want to read through a 32-page RFP response. You want to just get the information, bullet it out. Yes, we can do this. Here's the plan, and move on. Especially if you're competing with 3 or 4 others and they want to get through that process as quickly as possible. Use some quality visuals in your materials to give planners a sense of place and generate excitement. Using a Word document is fine, But add in some nice images of your venue or an event that's occurred there, or some dramatic uplighting, or a beautiful lawn area with a tent, or whatever it is that helps establish how unique you are, and how well some of your facilities and venues or services, if you've got some great catering shots, how that's going to give them a sense of who you are and what it is that you offer beyond just the words on the page. Now, again, if you can provide interactive links in there, so maybe, they've told you what they want F&B wise, and so you've spec'd out what continental breakfast, airline chicken lunch and an afternoon snack break, and say, this is what, I think I've heard in your RFP, but if you'd like to take a look at our full menus, click the link here. Give them the link so they can click. If they want to dig in deeper and say, oh, I actually really like this snack, or oh, why don't I upgrade to the filet mignon, or whatever it is, you're starting that process of engaging them in an upsell process, or at least having some flexibility to customize the event to what it is that they're looking for. Make sure all their specifications are addressed and that questions are answered, and have the response proofed for typos, grammar, and omission. Okay, this is really critical. Again, you really want to, again, I'm embarrassed because I had with thing up there and I must have missed a red line under the word when I did it. But it's embarrassing when you do something in front of a professional audience. And you want to make sure that you're not doing that. Now, I didn't have anyone else look at my presentation today. Clearly, I probably should have. You want to do that with this. Have someone else in your office that didn't put it together, give it a quick run through and make sure that it looks professional, it's organized, it addresses the information, and it's ready to go. Now, the layout, and again, you can come up with what works best for you. There's a lot of templates out there that you can find on Google to follow. Most of them, and this is very similar to what I did, most of them kind of gel down into this particular format here. So you start with a personalized introduction or a cover letter. And again, this is not just a form letter. This is, hey, I've listened to you. I've read what's in your materials. I understand, or I think I understand what you're going for here. So here is my personal response as to why I think our venue is the right fit for you. And that's relatable to things I've seen in your emails or your RFP sheet or spec sheet or whatever it might be. And so you start with that so they know that you're engaged. This is not just a, I wrote this up and shipped it off in 5 minutes. I did spend some time with the document, with your request, trying to put together a good proposal. You then do an executive summary, 1 page, bulleted, nice high quality image at the top or the bottom. And the reason that this is really important is a lot of the planners are not the final decision makers. They're taking it to a supervisor, a board, an organization that's hired them as an independent meeting planner, and they maybe don't want to read all 17 pages. They want the summary that says, here's what we do, here's the facilities, here's the total cost. You don't have to break it out. Here's the total cost, and there you go. And make it easy for them to pass that along to whoever might be a decision maker, so they don't have to do that work to put it together for them. You then need to do the deliverable, list the deliverables based on your interpretation of the RFP or the specification match. If they gave you a set of specs, and I remember one time I got a 37-page specifications document for the International Jugglers Association, which was a group I really, really wanted. And I took all the time to fill out that 37 pages worth of specifications. And then at the end of the day, I couldn't get them to approve fire in my campus theater. So we ended up losing it simply because I couldn't let the fire jugglers juggle in the final performance on the main stage. But whatever. Hopefully it's not 37 pages, but whatever it is, you need to make sure you go through and address all of the specifications, or that you list all the deliverables. If they're looking for housing and food and technology and meeting space and parking and whatever it is, that you have an answer, you have a proposal, you have an option for everything that they're looking for. And again, acknowledge the things that you can't meet. If you can offer solutions, that's great. Hey, I can't get you in to this particular part of the facility where you'd be all together, but I can do it here, and here's the way we're going to help transition so that it's not an impact on your attendees. Whatever kinds of solutions it is that you can offer them for the gaps that you have. Next up is pricing. So be clear about the pricing for the various elements out there. And let them know if there's flexibility or room to negotiate if that's applicable. So, you don't want to invite people lowballing you or things like that, but you can acknowledge for people that, hey, this is our standard pricing, but I'm willing to talk to you about working within your budget or things like that. Give me a call if you want to talk about that, or let's dig into this a little bit deeper if you need to do that. If you were like, I negotiated all the time. Not hugely. I didn't give people 50% discounts and things like that. But if I thought 5% off or 10% off was going to help me land a good piece of business that still had great ROI, then I kept that in my back pocket. And I was ready to go with it if I felt there was pricing sensitivity occurring out there. You want to list relevant qualifications and experience or references that exist out there. So again, what are meetings like this that you've hosted in the past, or who are the meeting planners that have held meetings like this that they can call and talk to if they want to do a check on you to see, if you really do deliver in the way that you say. And then finally, a lot of people don't do this in their responses, but you really should. You should give them a line for them to sign, I accept this proposal, as written, or some kind of a call to action like, hey, click here to go ahead and start the contracting process, or click here to officially reserve space. I mean, do something that lets them say, you know what, I've read this, I like this, I'm good. Even if we have a couple things we have to work out, I'm going to sign it, or I'm going to say, click to book now, and I'm going to get moving on the contracting phase of this. A lot of people will send it without that, and then you're busy chasing them down for 2 or 3 weeks saying, do you want to do this? Are you ready to sign? What's going on with this particular piece of it? All right, moving on. Last phase is follow-up. So some sobering statistics to share about the follow-up phase of the process. Nearly half of all sales representatives do not follow up at all. The average sales representative sends 2 follow-up emails, which isn't bad, but it takes 6 to 7 follow-ups on average to close a sale. And I'll never forget, I was at a conference and the keynote speaker had actually floated a test lead to all the attendees of the conference, and he reported out the statistics on how many people responded. And this was in 1990, and that number is still pretty darn accurate in 2023, that nearly half the room didn't raise their hands in terms of who responded, or he reported about half the room actually sent something back. He then asked how many people followed up after the initial response. And I had at least sent 1 email after it, but then I got busy and I didn't do any more follow-up. And there was only like 3 people in the room that had followed up more than twice. And so you can see it doesn't take a lot to be competitive in this space with other sales representatives that are doing the same jobs that you are, if you want to be the one that stands out and works hard to close a sale. Sales reps that follow up within a day of their first message receive about a 25% reply rate on average. So you should follow up within that first day, just say, hey, did you get this? Just checking in. Do you have any questions? But then what you want to do is you don't want to be that salesperson that calls them every day or emails them every day or twice a day. The best cadence on average is follow up about 6 times in 3 weeks. So that's every 2 to 3 days, where you will kind of send out another, hey, did you get this? Hey, do you have questions? Hey, can we find time to connect and talk further, in a way to keep yourself present, but not in an annoying fashion out there. Now, some things that you can do to help with your follow-up strategy is 1, vary the day of week or the time of day that you outreach. So if you sent your first message on a Friday afternoon, try doing it on a Tuesday morning, or try sending it over lunch, or seeing, is there a time that someone typically will respond more quickly to a message that you send in? Maybe because they have the headspace to be able to do it. Some people's mornings are harder, some people's afternoons are harder. So try different days a week or times a day. Try different follow-up channels. So yes, we're all going to use email because it's quick, it's efficient, it's easy, but pick up the phone and call. Try that once or twice in those 6 contacts and leave them a voicemail and say, I've sent you a couple messages. Can we connect? And maybe you get them on the phone and can have that conversation. Or maybe even use social media. Now, I listed LinkedIn because that is kind of an appropriate place. I do get some of this in my own, personal life here from people chasing me down on LinkedIn. I wouldn't send people a Facebook message or an Instagram, direct message or anything like that. I think that's a little stalky, so I wouldn't do that. But LinkedIn is a suitable way. Maybe also just try to get their attention and get in front of them. Personalize your messages whenever you can and try to make a connection. So we were in Chicago for ASTI a month or so ago. We were doing some sales calls there, and I had sent an initial email saying I was coming and talking a little bit about my my history with Chicago. And then after I'd been there a couple days and we were following up with people that hadn't responded, I told them what I'd done the first couple days and where I'd gone. And I really tried to connect with them about their city. And it worked. I got 2 or 3 more people to reach out and say, oh, I've had dinner before there. Did you enjoy it? Or, oh, I've not been there in a while. I need to go again. And those are some things that maybe help encourage someone to feel like it's not just a robot on the other end shooting up the next follow-up message for the day. When you get near the end of that process, try to create that sense of urgency. So, one that's usually pretty effective for me is I thought I'd try one last time to reach out and see if we can schedule a meeting or whatever it is. And oftentimes when you're signaling, hey, this is the end of my trying to chase you down, some people might be relieved, but other people will go, oh, I really do have to respond to Joel and see if we can connect and talk through this. Or we're seeing a high volume of inquiries and we want to make sure that your event is booked in. So, let's connect soon and that kind of thing. So try to do that as you get near the end. But eventually, send them that last message that says, you know what, I appreciate the inquiry. Now might not be the right time. If you're interested, you know where to find me. And I mean, again, you're obviously going to wordsmith this a little nicer than that. And we'd love to host you for this or any other event in the future. So always do that closing message to kind of close the loop on everything. And then finally, whenever you can, use messaging automation for reminders, tracking, or even triggering actions on the planner's end. So you can actually, in Outlook, for example, you can put a reminder on the recipient's end of things to follow up with you Tuesday by 9 a.m. or something like that. Many organizations might block that on an inbound message, but many do not. And so all of a sudden, they'll have a reminder that pops up that day that says, oh, follow up with Joel by 9 a.m. So there are ways to do that. You can flag, reminder follow-up messages in Outlook, or you can use a CRM system if you have it to schedule that cadence of when are they going to go out on different days and different times and things like that to make it easier. So you're not trying to remember who have I sent emails to and digging back through all your sent messages to figure out who it is that you're supposed to be following up with at that time. And I know we're an hour in, but we've got just a couple minutes more here. So hang with me if you can, and we'll get through the last couple of slides. The summary here, again, this is my independent professional meeting planner friend that does 120 events a year. I really see the proposal process as my first glimpse into what my event will be like at that venue. Do they get back to me quickly? Do they listen to my needs? Do they anticipate challenges and provide solutions? Is their flair and style in the materials that they send? Is their communication professional? If I'm not impressed during the proposal process, chances are good I will not be impressed when I'm on site. And I thought this captured the essence of this really well, which is to say, the response process really is your first chance to make an impression with a meeting planner. If you're using the 90s Word document template stuff and sending it out, if you're not current with your brand, if you're not providing the interactive links or the high quality images or the links to the tours or the things like that, chances are that you're not going to stand out if it's a competitive field and there's 4 or 5 or 6 other places that are sending in proposals as well. Honestly, if those things don't already live on your website, you're probably getting passed over more often than you know, because as we referenced, they're doing all these searches ahead of time and trying to narrow it down to the 1 or the 3 or 4 shortlist venues that they want to book with. If your website is not giving them that information, if it's not impressing them in that way, then they're likely not including you in that process. And so this is, again, really relevant to the response process. It's really relevant to presenting yourself to the world throughout the entire awareness phase, introductory and awareness phase of the sales funnel, to show them that you are an impressive venue, that you've got your act together, and that you're ready to serve them when they're ready to engage with you. So that's pretty much it. I'll stop really quickly for just a minute and see if anybody has any questions out there. While I'm doing that, I'm going to just launch a poll for evaluations. So if you can take just a couple minutes before you drop off and fill that out. It's 3 short questions, all single choice. That helps me get some feedback on how we did today. Again, check in chat or check in Q of A. I know I presented a lot of information today. I am going to send you the slide deck so that you will have it. It will be, again, it will be recorded and published to the Unique Venues website. should be sometime tomorrow in the late afternoon, usually about 24 hours when we get it up there. So you can come back, watch it again, share it with others, and tell all your friends. So I'm not seeing any questions come through. I do appreciate everyone's time and attendance today. It's been a little while since we've done some educational webinars. We know that as everyone was coming out of the pandemic last year, everyone was hugely crazy busy trying to get caught up on everything that had changed and what was new at their venue and what they were going to have to do to refill their pipelines. We saw the same thing at Unique Venues. And so we are happy to kind of be back in a more stable place. We plan to do these quarterly at a minimum, mixed in as well with our client roundtables that we also offer quarterly, and some other miscellaneous program that we sprinkle in there. So keep your eyes on our newsletters and our individual emails about our upcoming programming. Our next webinar will be in July, and it's going to be a conversation about kind of some customer service trends and some things that relate to the meetings and events industry. I see a question really quickly. And again, if you have to drop off, thank you again for your time. If you haven't completed the evaluation yet, please do so. Alan Josie, do you automatically add all inquiries into your CRM? What systems are people using and how to ensure you keep up with CRM and utilize it fully? There's another hour-long webinar that I'm going to put on my list that maybe we can cultivate and put together for you. I can tell you that best practice is yes. Any inquiry that comes in, you should put in your CRM. If you are a Unique Venues client and you're not going to your client dashboard every 2 or 3 weeks and looking at the open RFPs list, which is a open list to all clients of meeting planners that submitted leads to us, that maybe know where they want to go, but also said, but I'm open to hearing from anyone. If you're not going there and capturing those and putting them in your CRM, you're missing an opportunity, because I know how hard it is to harvest new contacts and prospects and get them out there. So anywhere that you can get them, if they've reached out to you, put them in. They may opt out of communications after you start communicating with them, and that's fine. There's no harm there, but we find that most people don't. We gather planner information from a lot of different places. We put them in our database, and we have very few that opt out from ongoing communications from us. And we communicate pretty frequently with our planners. They're getting something from us at least once every 2 weeks, depending on the time of year. It might be once a week that they're getting something from us. And we've got 42,000 that are still out there doing that. So yes, definitely put them in. There are a wide range of CRMs that exist out there. And I will go ahead and look at that as a future webinar topic, and maybe pull in 2 or 3 venues that are using different CRMs, and maybe we'll do a panel discussion or something like that to talk about how they're using those systems. All right. With that, this is your last chance to fill out the evaluation, and I'll give everybody maybe 30 more seconds. Looks like we've had about 20 people fill it out, so that's fantastic. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it very much. And with that, everyone have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and a good rest of your week. For those of you that are gearing up for a summer season, I hope that your spring wraps up nicely and summer launches well. For those of you that are year-round venues, I hope your pipelines are full and that planners are treating you well as they come in and hold their meetings and events at your venues. With that, we'll see you at the next Unique Venues webinar. Have a wonderful day.